Hello and welcome to the Tough Girl podcast, which is all about motivating and inspiring you. I'm your host, Sarah Williams. Today, I'm delighted we're going to be speaking to Lowri Davies, who's a kayaker, European Freestyle Champion and adventurer who has paddled in remote locations around the world, claiming first ascents in Mongolia and Georgia. Hi, Lowri.
Hi.
How are things with you?
Oh, really good, thank you.
Where are you based, Lowri?
I'm in Llangollen in North Wales, on the banks of the River Dee.
Is that where you grew up?
No, I'm originally from North Wales. My family's from North Wales, but I actually grew up in York. So my school years were spent in York, and that's actually where I started my kayaking.
Oh, fabulous. I'm super excited to talk to you about your kayaking and some of the challenges and adventures that you've been on. But before we get to that, how would you introduce yourself?
I'm 33 years old. I run a kayak coaching business called Flow Free. I also have competed in freestyle kayaking since I was about 16 years old. I had a little break in the middle, but I'm back at it. So I'm on the British team again now. And I've also done a lot of kayak expeditions around the world. So pretty much I'm a whitewater kayaker. That's what I do. But I also enjoy mountain biking and hill walking and climbing. So generally just being outdoors, really.
Let's go back and find out how you first got into kayaking. What happened there?
So I was really fortunate that my parents are both really outdoorsy. So I've always been taken on outdoorsy adventures, and kayaking was one of the things that both my parents did, but originally was kind of my dad's thing. He got into it through university, and then my mum kind of got into it via him. So even from a really young age, I sort of was around kayaking. But for me, when I was really little, kayaking wasn't very interesting because the old school kayaks that were around then were really big, and I kind of slopped around in them. All the gear didn't fit little kids. So it wasn't really until I was about 14 years old when I got sort of a bit more kind of adult sized. And also the gear was really revolutionizing. So the kayaks got a lot smaller, and there was gear that actually fit women and children. It suddenly just became accessible, and I was able to actually make the kayaks do interesting things rather than just sort of sitting on a flat lake, not even able to make it fall over. And really, like, that's the fun things, is just mucking about, isn't it? So yeah, it was when I could muck about, make the kayaks fall over and just have fun, that I really got hooked.
So you got hooked pretty quickly, and it led to a world championships, which obviously amazing. Tell us a little bit more about that journey.
I went to my first World Championships when I was 16 years old, and that came about sort of by a few circumstances, really. I was really fortunate to be in a really good canoe club with lots of active kayakers, but really we didn't compete. There was no sort of competition culture in the canoe club. We just went kayaking for fun. But I bumped into the manager of the British team at the time, and myself and my friend Sam Ellis. We were both juniors, and he was really excited because he could probably see how much we loved kayaking, but also because he could see a bit of talent there. So he really encouraged us to go to the team selection competition, and we both made the team together, which was amazing because, you know, just having one of your best mates there on this journey with you was incredible. So the first World Championships was out in Spain in a place called Sort. So yes, I went literally from my last GCSE exam. I was picked up in the car, went straight to the airport to go out and compete in the World Championships at age 16.
Incredible opportunity, and an amazing thing to be doing at 16 as well, such a young age. I mean, what was that like for you? I mean, I suppose reflecting back now, can you think back to that experience, to how you were feeling? Were you apprehensive? Were you nervous?
I think I was just super excited. Yeah, I was really excited. I know, I can remember for Sam, it was his first ever time abroad. He'd literally never been abroad before. And my mum was his guardian. So he was basically like being my surrogate brother as well. So I can just remember how excited he was about the whole process as well. So that obviously amps up your excitement when you've got someone next to you who's like literally jumping up and down, you know, so excited. And then Sam and I had pretty much spent the last year before that, we'd get in from school and we'd watch kayaking videos. When I say videos, I mean literally videos, like VHS videos. And we'd, but like the people in those videos were we just idolized them. They were amazing. And then we arrived in Sort, and most of those people were there in real life, and we met them, we spoke to them, we went kayaking with them, and that was incredible to be sort of meeting your heroes and to be making friends with them.
Did you have any expectations for the World Championships?
Not that time at all. I didn't know what to expect, so I was just going there to sort of make the most of the experience, I suppose. And I didn't really have any expectation of kind of how I'd perform, or I didn't even know how many juniors there would be in the ladies category. So yeah, I had really no idea.
What makes a good kayaker?
Oh, well, I think the great thing about things like kayaking is that there's kind of lots of different types of kayaking, and it appeals to lots of different people for different reasons. So I don't think there's necessarily one thing that makes a good kayaker. For freestyle kayaking, you've got to be reasonably fit because it's quite a gymnastic sort of sport. But and water confidence helps a lot because the kind of thing we're doing is doing flips and tricks. So we're going upside down in the water all of the time, and we're not thinking about that. But if you were at all apprehensive about water, then that probably wouldn't be the discipline that would appeal to you. But then, there's lots of other types of kayaking that may well appeal. So like sea kayaking, or touring on the lakes, or surf kayaking, sprint if you're into going really fast, or slalom if you're into precision. So there's loads of stuff out there. Or even just, going out on a stand-up paddleboard, or sit on top and just chilling out. Yeah. So I don't think there's kind of like one type of person that I can say, that makes a good kayaker.
So you came back from the World Championships having had this experience, and you've talked about it being sort of like a life-changing experience. How did it change your life, and did it change the direction of your life, or did it just consolidate what you wanted to do in the future?
I think a little bit of both. I think I'd always, when I was watching those videos, I was always thinking how cool it would be to have the lifestyle that it seemed like those guys on the video had, to be traveling the world and going kayaking. And then going to the World Championships and meeting those people kind of made it more attainable, made it more realistic, and also gave me obviously a whole load of contacts that I could then call upon if I wanted to travel, or just wanted advice about certain places, or just, progressing my kayaking. So it opened lots of doors in that respect. I guess it was also like a very fortunate formative time in that I'd literally just done my GCSEs, and that was actually the time that I moved house as well. So I moved to Wales, and Wales is a great place for whitewater kayaking. So suddenly I had a whole bunch of new contacts, either through the British team or further afield. And I'd moved house, and I was choosing my A levels. And I guess I kind of was thinking a little bit further ahead, what could I do that would allow me to earn money whilst having that sort of lifestyle? And I just kind of tried to sort of work out a way of doing that, really.
Well, what did you decide?
Well, initially, actually, I thought because I knew I wanted to travel quite a lot, but didn't think I necessarily could make money just off kayaking. So I actually went down the line of doing computer science. My degree is actually software engineering. So I have a first-class master's in software engineering, which I don't really use anymore at all. But the idea behind that was that I could do that anywhere. As long as I had an internet connection, I theoretically could do that work, and it would be work that should pay me pretty well. So hopefully it would allow for a really good work-life balance. Whilst I was at university, I had further opportunities. So I went on the Four Borders expedition, and whilst at university was also when I won the European Championships as a senior in freestyle. And so more doors opened to me through that time. And also I gained a lot more experience of coaching and built up my coaching business in the final couple of years of being at university. So although I had my degree to fall back on, I actually built up my business and thought, well, I'll give this a go whilst I'm young and whilst I can, whilst I've got no kind of ties or responsibilities, no children, mortgage, anything like that to be worried about. It actually developed quite quickly, and I had a strong enough business to be living off within a year or so. So that worked out really well for me.
I was going to say, you are definitely much more productive at university than I was. I think my final year was not that productive. And you were, building up your own business, doing your coaching, winning medals. Absolutely amazing.
I look back on it now and I've literally no idea how I do it, because I feel like I'm now a slither of that productivity.
You mentioned there about the Four Borders expedition. I'd love to hear more about that.
Yeah, so that was it's my first big expedition. We went to Siberia in Russia, Mongolia, and we actually went to Kazakhstan as well. So there's an expedition that happens every 2 years called the British University's Kayak Expedition, which is quite a unique kind of expedition, in that normally when you do an expedition, you kind of have a good idea of a place you want to go, and you ask people who are either your mates or have the right skills, and you form a team yourself, and then you go out and seek the sponsorship and whatever else. That's kind of usually the kind of progress that happens. The way this works is basically there's the title of the British University Kayak Expedition, and any full-time student can apply to be part of that team. And then previous people who've been on the expeditions go through those applications and make a shortlist. And those shortlisted people get invited to a weekend away in North Wales, where you basically go kayaking together, but you also need to come with a potential expedition destination, having been researched enough that you can sort of tell people about it and make them think it's viable. So through the course of the weekend, obviously everyone gets to know one another, and both the people and the destination get voted on in blind ballot. So basically the team is selected and the location is selected by everyone, regardless of whether or not they're going on that trip. So that happened to me. So I went on the selection that was in 2006 for the trip in 2007. So there was 8 of us selected, and none of us really knew one another. I knew one other person reasonably well, and then I'd sort of met a couple of times a couple of the others before the selection weekend. And we were all at different universities, so we were spread out all over the place. So organising the expedition, we're having to do it all via phone calls and emails and everything else. We tried to meet up as much as possible as a team, but we never actually got all 8 of us in the same place again after the selection weekend until we were all actually in Russia, which is pretty mad, really. And then we were on this 10-week expedition all together. And incredibly, for the most part, we got on incredibly well. Like normally when you're all put into a pressured situation, there will be, especially with 8 people, 8 different personalities, you'd expect at some point, it's the whole premise of Big Brother, isn't it, really? At some point there's going to be a big fallout, a big drama. And really we didn't have any big drama. We all got on surprisingly well and made lifelong friendships out of it.
What was the ratio, men to women?
Oh, I was the only girl. And in fact, I was the first female to go on the British University's Kayak Expedition. There has since, thankfully, been a number of other girls that have made the team over the years that have passed since. But yeah, it was, again, that's kind of something that leading up to it, I didn't really know how that was going to work out. But I was quite used to being in the minority. But the sports and the subjects I've chosen to study have been pretty male-dominated sports. Software engineering was a pretty male-dominated world. When I did my placement at IBM, that was a pretty male-dominated world. Yeah, kayaking generally has historically been pretty male-dominated. Thankfully, that is changing these days. But so I wasn't too uncomfortable with the concept of being away with quite a blokey group. But I did think over a 10-week period, how might that go being the only girl? And it was fun. There was a lot of banter, but yeah, it worked really well.
So let's talk a little bit more about the expedition over in Russia. A team of 8 people. You're the only girl. You've planned and organised this expedition over email and telephone. Then suddenly you're out there. You're in Russia. Talk us through what were the goals? What was the plan? What were you hoping to achieve?
Okay, so we kind of had 2 kind of segments to the trip. We first flew into Russia, and we had a multi-entry visa, because what we wanted to do was we kind of had some information about the rivers in Russia, whereas we also wanted to do a couple of weeks doing exploratory stuff in Mongolia. And there was little to no information about any rivers there. In fact, there basically hadn't really been anyone do any whitewater kayaking there at all. So we flew in first to Russia and did a couple of rivers to try and consolidate as a team and to make sure that we had like all the kit that we needed if we were going to do multi-day trips and that sort of thing. And then we went across the border. Now, the border crossing in itself was quite an adventure, to be honest, because a truck in Russia that we with a translator who we'd hired for both Russian segments of the trip. And then we had this 2-week kind of middle part of the trip where we were going across to Mongolia, and we separately had hired trucks on that side with a Mongolian fixer translator. But there's like a 32-kilometre no man's land between the border, and actually this border had only very recently opened to anyone who wasn't Russian or Mongolian, so any sort of foreigners, if you like. So we were actually kind of some of the first foreign people to be going across this borderland. And between the no man's land, only vehicles with the right permits were allowed. So neither of our vehicles on either side had the right permits. So we actually had to just blag our way onto various other people's vehicles to make it away across this border, where obviously there's really tight controls, lots of different passport control checkpoints. So it was a bit like wacky races, really, because we were all in different 4x4s. Our boats had been tied to the roof of various people's 4x4s. And we kept kind of overtaking one another. And it was only like one or two of us in each vehicle. So we were kind of on our own. Looking back at it, all sorts of things could have gone wrong. And there was one person ended up in a vehicle where they had a flat tire and were stuck in no man's land for ages. And someone else nearly got abandoned at one of the passport control points. So all sorts of shenanigans. And eventually we all made it to the other side.
I can just imagine sort of like people heading in one direction, equipment heading in the other direction, trying to keep track of everything.
Oh yeah, it was pretty crazy. And that we had quite a tight window as well, because not only did we only have the 2 weeks in Mongolia with that, that we'd paid for our transport and everything on that side. So obviously we wanted to get there as soon as possible to make as much out of that as possible. But also there was a big national holiday in Mongolia, only another day or so away. So the border was actually going to close for 3 days. So if we didn't get across that day, basically we would be stuck for 3 days on the other side of the border. And even worse would be if half of the team made it across and half of the team didn't, and we'd just be stuck on either side of this no man's land for 3 days waiting for the rest of the team. So so it was a little bit kind of crazy and stressful, but hilarious at the same time. I can remember thinking that morning, in fact, when we stood at the border and all our boats had finally been sort of placed on different car roofs, and we all seemed to have somewhere to be going. And I just remember looking across and just thinking, you know what? I just remember being so thankful for having the opportunity to have such a great adventure, and for the people that I was with. And we'd only been in Russia for just under 2 weeks at that point. It was still quite early days on our trip, but I was already just thinking, wow, this is a trip of a lifetime.
Tell us more about Mongolia and what Mongolia was like.
We were a little bit unfortunate on the timing of our Mongolia trip, because for kayakers, obviously we need water, and we happened to be there in the worst drought they'd had in like 10 years. So it's obviously pretty barren there, just kind of gravelly sort of desert. So once we got across the border and we were traveling towards our first sort of town we were heading for, we literally were just driving across just gravel wasteland, basically. And the drivers, I just don't understand how they know where they're going, because they must just be on almost like a bearing, because there's no roads, it's just gravel everywhere. And no matter where we pointed to on a map as we progressed through our trip, trying to find appropriate rivers to go kayaking on, they seemed to know how to make their way there across the sort of gravelly mountains, which it just astounded me, really. Obviously, they had no sat nav, and we didn't. It was kind of before the times when sat navs for such things were really affordable. So we didn't have anything like that either. We just had maps. They really impressed me. But it was a bit weird driving across literally a desert, driving past camels with kayaks on the roof, looking for water. You're like, I think we've misjudged this a little bit.
Did you manage to find any water?
We did, yeah. Thankfully, we so the first set of mountains we went to were just pretty much completely dry. We kind of reassessed the situation, and we knew that where we'd been kayaking in Russia, there'd been loads of water. and that was all coming off snowmelt. So we just rearranged where we were going to try and get kind of the other side of the watershed of the snowmelt that was coming off the mountains in Russia. So we moved to the sort of Mongolian Altai mountains, and we found a couple of really nice rivers. We had to hike in. We'd spoken to some locals and used our translator to ask about were there any waterfalls, and they said there were lots of waterfalls, and we just had to go for a walk. So we hiked in to scout it without our kayaks first of all, because the kayaks are pretty bulky and heavy and hard work. So we didn't want to sort of do a 10-mile walk with our kayak only to find there was like a stream or something. So we hiked in without the kayaks, and we were amazed what we found, because obviously we've been driving around the desert and kept looking at dry riverbeds for I think a week before we found anything. So we were starting to lose hope really, and then sort of came over this mountain into the valley, and found this beautiful river with lots of genuinely good waterfalls that we could kayak off, and that would be really fun to kayak off. So we were super excited. So we sort of ran back to the vans and prepped for the next day to hike in and kayak down. And it's really incredible to go kayaking somewhere that literally no one else has been. And so that section of river, you could get there on foot, and then we were able to meet our van at the end of the day, having done a great day's kayaking, having like the time of our lives, and then camped out surrounded by the mountains under the stars. And then we continued down the river from there, and it completely changed in character from then, because it had been quite a sort of low volume, small waterfall run, and then it went into this big deep canyon. It was big red walls, so but it was less steep as the river went. So there were less waterfalls, more kind of small technical rapids, and really fun. But we were really aware that we were going into a canyon. So what we didn't want to do was commit ourselves into something that we couldn't get ourselves back out of if it turned out that round the corner on the river there was something that was unkayakable. Yeah, normally you can get out on the banks and you can scout the rapids and you can portage around it if you need to. But when you've got really steep banks or you're in a gorge, sometimes that bank access is just not possible. You're just next to cliffs. Yeah, we were having to take it pretty slow, but it was a pretty fantastic setting and really beautiful place to be. And actually, it all went to plan, and there were no crazy, awful things around the corner. Everything was totally kayakable, grade 3, 4. And so basically really fun. And then it opened out at the end to almost like plains. And we suddenly realized that we'd done it, and that feeling of having done 2 days of first descent on 2 completely sort of different styles of whitewater in a place where it seemed so unlikely really to produce the goods. It did feel like such a wild achievement.
I'm just interested, there was obviously 8 of you out there. What was your role? Did you all have sort of dedicated roles in the team?
We had fairly dedicated roles in the lead up, so during the organisation. So as a computer science student, I was obviously tasked with the website and all that sort of stuff. But we also had, obviously, we needed to try and get as much sponsorship as possible to be able to afford this expedition, grant applications. And then we also needed to get all the gear that we needed together. So each of us took on different roles relating to those things. We did a wilderness first aid course all together, because obviously we were going to be in really remote locations, and we wanted to make sure that whoever was injured, there was always going to be somebody with them that knew what to do. And then obviously all the first aid equipment to take with us as well, and medication and stuff as well, because we were going to be pretty remote. The longest multi-day trip we did in Russia was a 7-day multi-day. So in the middle of that, you're so far in the wilderness. It would hiking out from there to somewhere of civilization probably take maybe 5 days or something, and that's if you didn't get lost. So we needed to be really self-sufficient. So, and then we also did a swift water safety and rescue. A lot of us were already trained in it. We wanted to do it as a team so that we could, we were all singing off the same hymn sheet when it came to it, and that we'd be working in the in the same way to try and do a rescue, because at the point where you're trying to do a rescue, you don't want to be trying to explain things to people. You just want everyone to be doing it exactly the same way, working to the same plan. There wasn't a point where we had all 8 of us in the same place at the same time before we got to Russia. So there was maybe like one person couldn't make the first aid course and did it on a different time, or there was one person who couldn't make the safety course who then did that at a different time. So it worked pretty well, but it would have been nice, I think, to have been able to get us all together before we got there.
An incredible time in Mongolia and Russia, but your kayaking has taken you to over 30 countries. You've kayaked on 6 different continents. Could you tell us a little bit more about one of your expeditions that you've been on that maybe stands out for you?
Yeah, sure. It's difficult to choose, isn't it? One of the places that I think gets not enough airtime is Georgia. So I ran a trip out to Georgia quite a few years ago now, but it's such a beautiful country, but pretty accessible. You can definitely do like a 2-week holiday / expedition, like a real adventure holiday, which is totally doable on annual leave. And there's easy flights to get there, and all the logistics can be taken care of relatively easily. And then you in this absolutely stunning country with some great rivers, and their season runs pretty much from April to October. There's just different areas of the country that where the rivers are running. And yeah, I think that trip was incredible because I really had no expectations for it. I was really blown away by just like really friendly, helpful local people, stunning scenery, and really interesting history as well. The whole history with Russia, and there's a couple of areas of Georgia that are Russian occupied, and obviously there's a lot of politics that goes with that. There'd actually been a war about 2 years before the first trip I did there over one of those Russian occupied areas. And we went really close to the border of that Russian occupied area. So it was really interesting. There was a lot of military there, but everyone was really friendly to us because, we were clearly just foreigners there with kayaks who, they could see what we were doing there. We had no ulterior motives. And so, yeah, both sides of the equation were really friendly. And we had, I've got this great photo of a couple of the soldiers in full get-up with their guns and everything, sitting in our kayaks looking really happy.
So who were you going on this expedition with? Was this with friendly? Was this with friends or like another group with 4 borders?
So this was actually the first one I did. A friend of mine had been out there a couple of years beforehand and seen the potential of it as a destination. And so he put together a trip itinerary and sold it as a client trip. And then he'd hurt his back. And then he asked me to take his place as the trip leader. So again, it was, just a great opportunity. And I was really fortunate to be able to move everything around in my calendar to be able to make that happen because, it was an absolutely incredible experience.
What's it like being a trip leader? Were you going with quite experienced kayakers, or was it more sort of a basic level and it was more like coaching as you were going?
So on that particular trip, they were all very experienced kayakers, but for them, it was their first experience of sort of expedition style kayaking. And for most of them, it was their first time potentially doing multi-day stuff and, basically being self-sufficient. There's a lot of responsibility on you, but part of what I wanted to do with that trip, because they were experienced kayakers, was to try and give them the skills that then in future they'd hopefully feel enabled to be able to just organise their own expeditions with their friends and go and do it themselves. So we did a lot of kind of mentored decision making. So where we were deciding where we'd go next to explore the next valley, or working out a plan for the couple of weeks that we had there. It wasn't me making decisions telling them what we're doing. It was very much a group thing, and as much as possible I was trying to just feed key information and allow them to try and come to decisions themselves. for me, that's something I really enjoy. That's part of why I have a coaching business. I really enjoy being able to open doors for people and allow them to get the skills or the experience that means that they can then go off and have their own adventures or their own fun, or improve their kayaking so that they can have more fun when they go kayaking. And yeah, so that's what I love about coaching.
I think what must be really interesting with something like kayaking must be people may have either like psychological blocks or confidence issues when it comes to maybe running certain rivers or waterfalls, or doing certain things. I know it's a very broad question, but how do you help people through the either confidence issues or the psychological blocks that they may have?
So with confidence, there's a number of different reasons why people might struggle. Often it's kind of simple in theory, in that it's a mix up of the feelings that you are feeling. Fear and excitement have pretty much the same symptoms, and it can be like easy to confuse the two. Or if you're feeling both, which often is the case in something like whitewater kayaking, is to mix up the part that is excitement with the part that is fear, and to feel it entirely just as fear. So one of the things that I often do with my clients is just work on recognizing the positives as well in terms of what we're feeling. So quite often, if we're looking at a rapid, the reason that we're there, the reason that we've gone kayaking, is because we enjoy kayaking, and we know that when we get to the bottom of that rapid, we're going to have this huge buzz and this big dose of adrenaline. There must be some excitement there in the mixture. So we've got heightened heart rate, bit of butterflies and whatever, but that's also what we feel when we feel fear. So being able to separate those out is a really useful skill, and being able to recognize that part of what we're feeling is actually a positive thing. I use other tactics as well. So some people literally just need to lower their arousal level, so they just become a bit more calm, centered. And there's a number of ways we can do that. So sometimes breathing techniques work. Sometimes singing or dancing helps. Dancing is something that I do before competitions to help me. And visualization as well can help a lot. So once you've got your heart rate down a little bit, sitting and trying to imagine in as realistic a way as possible, you actually doing whatever the thing is that you're scared of. So whether that's running the waterfall or the rapid, or taking part in the competition. And this goes for other walks of life as well. So whether it's, making a speech at work or whatever, if you can bring your heart rate down with some nice, big, long breaths, close your eyes, and then imagine doing exactly as you would like to do. The speech going as well as possible, absolutely nailing the line on that rapid. And then feel the feeling at the bottom, feel that buzz, feel that positive. And you'll recognize then, hopefully, that your heart rate will increase again when you feel that buzz, but hopefully in a really good way, in a real positive way. And then take hold of that and use that positive energy to do the thing that you want to do.
Yeah, lots of great tips in there. Separating out the feelings, fear and excitement, focusing on the positive, breathing. I mean, I've actually said this to myself when I've been out there and struggling. It's like, just breathe. Deep breath. Don't forget to breathe. Singing, dancing. I've never been dancing, but what works for you. And visualization can be incredibly powerful. Have you done any solo expeditions or solo whitewater challenges?
Not solo expeditions. I do sometimes do like solo kayaking. The challenges with solo whitewater kayaking are that obviously, if anything goes wrong, you're reliant on your team to help. If you're swimming from your kayak, you're washing off downstream. It's really handy to have some people there to help you, either to help you to the side or to pick up your gear. We can swim, and in most whitewater, we can swim ourselves to the side. Safety and rescue is something that I teach, and I'm really passionate about teaching. And I think it's really important for all whitewater kayakers to have a good grounding in safety and rescue, not just for helping others, but for helping yourself when you get into trouble. But yeah, you can swim yourself to the side, but your kayak's probably washed off downstream already. So if you're going kayaking on your own, you need to be understanding of those risks and be willing to accept those risks fully. I wouldn't normally recommend it, really, but it can be quite, I don't know, the sensation of being totally self-dependent is quite liberating as well. Like, I can remember a couple of times where just had those sort of real moments of like clarity almost. So I can remember I was kayaking one of the weirs on the Thames called Hurley. We go there quite a lot. It's one of the best waves to surf in the UK when it's running. And I was there a couple of days before one of the competitions there. And we put lights up on the bridge so we can see when we're surfing the wave in the dark. So I'd been surfing there and it was dark, but we had the lights on. And then I was paddling back just on flat water, but between the channels and the islands that are there on my own in the dark. And there were some fireworks going off, and it was just a really beautiful place to be. And I was there on my own, enjoying it, just feeling really sort of connected to nature, really.
Tell me what happened in Colombia.
Okay, so Colombia was another expedition I did. This time was entirely just with my friends. So there was 4 of us on this expedition. We had a fair amount of river notes, and there was some American kayakers that we'd been in contact with who'd done quite a lot of kayaking around Colombia. It's a place that's not all that well travelled, and there are parts of it that obviously are not hugely stable, and there's all sorts of things to be thinking about that I've never had to think about before. Like there was a couple of rivers where you couldn't get out on one side of the river because there was the potential for landmines, for example. Not something I've ever had to consider before. Yeah, really, really interesting, and a really interesting place to travel. We met some fantastic people. We also had like pretty ridiculous fiasco within our first week of being there. It was supposed to be one of our warm-up rivers. We'd gone out to go and find the river and found the put on. We thought the river looked quite low, but we'd been assured by the local raft guides that the river would take us maybe 2 or 3 hours. So we were like, okay, well, no worries. We can sort of smash this out this afternoon. No worries. Anyway, it turned out that the river actually took much longer than 2 to 3 hours. And I don't know why anyone had told us it took 2 to 3 hours in the first place, because we later found out that it takes everybody at least 6 hours. And because it was low water, it was particularly slow going for us. So we ended up sort of stuck down in this gorge, realizing that it was about to get dark. So we had to abandon our kayaks at the side of the river and hike our way out. Meanwhile, the sort of driver was wondering what on earth had happened to us and was worried for our lives. And we eventually made it up to the road, probably about 10 o'clock at night, found our driver and made it back into town. And told all the local raft guides what had happened, and they all just laughed at us and were like, well, of course you ended up benighted. You didn't get on the river until like 3 o'clock in the afternoon. And we're like, well, it was only supposed to take 2 hours. They're like, who told you that? We're like, well, what are you guys did? And so then the next day we had to go back. We had to hike back in, like through the jungle, and find where the place we'd sort of just stashed our boats, just literally, in the middle of the jungle next to the river. And then the river dropped even more. But we'd looked at the map and realised that we were about a kilometre from the takeout, the planned takeout, where there was a bridge. But it's quite steep, so that last section is the most difficult of the Whitewater. It's quite challenging. Even when there was the right water level, we would probably be taking that reasonably slowly, like scouting the rapids, making sure we had safety cover in place and all that sort of stuff. Because the river had dropped even more, most of the rapids were not navigable anymore, and so we actually ended up having to like hike our boats over these huge boulders down the riverbed, which was really, really time consuming. And then we ended up benighted for a second time, which we couldn't, we were just like, this can't be happening. We literally had 1 kilometre of river to do today. We've been here for 8 hours and we've still not got there. And so we had another fiasco trying to make our way out, and that took even longer. And then a couple of the team got sick. So we had to leave our boats abandoned there for another day. And then the 2 of us that weren't sick went back with one of the raft guides and hiked in from the bottom to find our kayaks and just hike them all the way through the jungle back to the road to be picked up. So a river that should have taken us 3 hours actually took us basically 3 days.
I mean, how do you handle those difficult situations when, it's not going to plan, the water isn't there, it's taken 3 days instead of 3 hours, realising, it's dark, you're going to have to leave the kayaks, you're going to have to hike your way out, you're going to have to find your driver. how do you handle those problems when you are out on an expedition? Obviously, things that you haven't necessarily planned for. So, but handling the unknown.
The most important thing is not to panic, because that achieves nothing. It doesn't help. So you just got to try and stay calm and try and rationally think through what your options are. And then I also like to try and think kind of from different angles at the problem. So see if there's any solutions that maybe we might not have thought of as an obvious solution. And keep morale high as well, because again, it doesn't help anything if people are feeling upset or angry or frustrated, or if there's tensions within the group. That doesn't help anything. So you can overcome really quite awful situations with a good sense of humor and a practical approach, I think.
Do you know what? And staying calm, thinking of different angles, keeping morale high is so important, especially the staying calm, because actually panicking doesn't help anything.
No, definitely not.
Lowri, in terms of encouraging other women to get involved in kayaking, maybe, they want to spend more time in the water, they're not quite sure how to take the first steps. What advice would you have?
In terms of getting involved with canoeing and kayaking, canoe clubs or kayak clubs are probably the best place to go. You've got a whole supply of people who've got the knowledge and the experience there. You've also got a whole bunch of kit for you to be able to use. So it means you don't need to fork out on loads of expensive kit, especially when you don't know necessarily exactly what it is that you want yet. So you get to try out loads of different styles of kayaks and work out what it is that you enjoy. So definitely, I would say get involved with a local canoe club. So if you just go on the British Canoeing website, you can find, there's like a find a club part of the website there, and you should be able to find one local to you. They're all over the UK. And then make sure you're surrounded by positive people. So sometimes, unfortunately, there are people who are involved in clubs or organisations or whatever who, for whatever reason, are pretty negative, whether that's specifically towards women or just generally. And sometimes it's about their own ego or maybe something else, but just don't give that any time. Find somebody else, find some different people. So if one club doesn't work for you, or a particular person within the club doesn't work for you, just move away from that person or that club and find some other people that you enjoy doing that sport with. Is like so much of life is about who you spend the time with doing that thing. That's what makes or breaks a situation. You can be in an amazing location, but if you're with a group of people that you're having massive argument with, you're probably not going to enjoy it that much. On the flip side, you could be spending 3 days doing a river that should have taken you 3 hours, but if you're enjoying your company, you're probably still going to come out feeling pretty positive about that. So find good people, surround yourself with good people.
And for those women who are quite experienced at kayaking, but maybe they haven't gone and done sort of expeditions themselves, but they'd like to step outside their comfort zone a little bit more, maybe not to get lost in the jungles of Colombia, but what advice would you have to encourage more people to start doing other expeditions?
In this day and age, getting enough information to feel confident that your plan is sound is a lot easier. We've got Google Earth, Google Maps, and all sorts of information on the internet. The ability to be able to make contact with people locally, wherever it is that we're going to generally, and so that does make things kind of it doesn't make it necessarily easier, but it makes you feel like you've got a better idea of what you're getting yourself in for. Yeah, in terms of expedition, we were really lucky with the four boarders being, essentially names from a hat and getting on really well. So otherwise, again, I think it comes back to choosing the right people. So find people who are interested and passionate in the same sort of trip that you are, with the same expectations. Having run commercial trips and been on many expeditions myself, I find that the biggest challenge is when people have different expectations or different desires from a trip, because if they're just misaligned, you're never going to line them up, and so there's always going to be somebody who's feeling like they're not getting what they want from that trip. So make sure you've got people who are interested in the same thing out of that trip as you. So whether that's exploring somewhere really remote, or whether that's just doing some really beautiful rivers, regardless of whether or not they've been paddled before, or whether that's doing grade 2, grade 3, or whether that's doing grade 4, grade 5. But yeah, having kind of the same agenda really helps to make a successful trip.
And what's next for you in terms of future challenges?
So at the moment, I've got quite a lot of freestyle competitions. So I've literally just got back from 4 big competitions around Europe, including the World Cups. And then I've got a few coaching trips that I'm running, so and guiding as well down the Verdon Canyon, which I'm really looking forward to because that's an absolutely incredible place. And then European Championships later this summer. Then I head out to the Zambezi, running a trip out on the Zambezi, and I'm super excited about that. Another incredible location. And then I don't know beyond that. My plans are a little bit up in the air, really. Normally in the winter, I would head out to Uganda, but unfortunately, there's a dam being built that's being completed this August. So a lot of the Whitewater will have disappeared under the reservoir that's formed by that dam. It's really a heartbreaking story, to be honest, because, it's a pretty unethical dam. It's going to displace a lot of people. It's going to destroy a lot of habitat and for very little gain. And in fact, Uganda's got more power than it needs at the moment because the people can't afford power. So it's a pretty pointless dam that's going to do all sorts of damage. So I'm at the moment I'm trying to work out what to do with myself over this winter. But I don't really like spending the full winter in the UK, a bit cold and miserable. So I've got to get some form of winter sunshine. But where that'll be, I'm not quite sure yet. So
absolutely, I completely agree. Yeah, go find some sunshine, go find somewhere lovely to paddle. And Lowri, where can people find more information about you and what you do online?
So my coaching company is called Flowfree, so flowfree.co.uk or search Flowfree on Facebook. Myself, I can be found on Facebook just as Lowri Davies. Instagram is flowfree_Lowri, and Twitter is the same. I'm probably most active on Instagram and Facebook, really. And if you want to get hold of me, then emailing via my Flowfree website or via Facebook is the easiest way.
Fantastic. Lowri, thank you so much for coming on the Tough Girl podcast to share more about your story and what the challenges that you've done and what you've achieved. Absolutely inspiring. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Hey tribe, I hope you enjoyed that episode with Lowri. Now, if you are interested in kayaking, I've got another couple of podcast episodes that I can recommend to you. Go and take a listen to Laura Kennington, who is a British adventure athlete who's got a passion for the endurance capability of the human body. She's a strong believer in the positive impact that adventure and sport can have on children and adults alike. Laura uses her human-powered journeys as a platform to inspire and encourage others to get outside. Her previous adventures include solo kayaking in Russia, solo cycling the world's longest coastal route in Ireland, and circumnavigating 3 of the Channel Islands using 3 different sporting disciplines as part of a rather extreme triathlon. As well as listening to Laura, you can take a listen to Justine Kurgan-Venn, who's a sea kayaker and one of the top living explorers in the United Kingdom. I'd also recommend that you take a listen to Erin Bastian as well. She's a sea and wild water kayaker with expeditions to Sardinia and Patagonia. In 2016, she was nominated for the World Paddle Awards. If you want to find more information about the previous guests that we've had on the Tough Girl podcast, then please do go check out toughgirlchallenges.com. That's where you can find all of the information. All of the show notes are on the blog. You can find links to my books and my social media channels from YouTube to Instagram to Facebook. You can also find out more information about me and my backstory and the different challenges that I've done, from running the Marathon des Sables, 6 marathons in 6 days, to through hiking the Appalachian Trail, to climbing Kilimanjaro, to heading off on my most recent challenge, which is cycling the Pacific Coast Highway and then cycling the Baja Divide in Mexico, which is the journey that I'm currently on at the moment. Tough Girl podcast comes out every Tuesday at 7 a.m. UK time, and next week we've got the amazing Janice Scotney coming on the Tough Girl podcast. She's 36, she's a vegan, she's an ultra runner who works as a human rights lawyer. Jen does actually struggle to call herself a runner, but she has run multiple ultras in the UK and has completed the Dig Deep Ultra, the Spine Challenge and the Northern Traverse. Following that, on the 6th of November, we're speaking to Sophie Hollingsworth, who's a former ballerina turned award-winning explorer. She was a new Explorer of the Year in 2017. She's a Fulbright scholar, fellow of the Explorers Club and post-grad fellow of the RGS. Absolutely incredible women we have coming up on the Tough Girl podcast, so make sure that you subscribe so you don't miss out on a single episode. Part of my mission with Tough Girl Challenges is to increase the amount of female role models in the media. It is to share these stories of incredible women who don't get the exposure that they deserve on mainstream media. I want to make a difference. I want to make a change, and you can help me do that by becoming a patron and supporting my mission to increase the amount of female role models in the media. Get involved, support, donate $5 a month, donate $10 a month, $15 a month, $25 a month, whatever it is that you can afford. It makes a huge difference. If you go and check out Patreon, patreon.com/Tough Girl Podcast, you can see the different levels that you can subscribe at and become a patron at. All patrons from $2 above will get your name on a dedicated patrons page on my website. For $5 and above, if you're a female, you can come and join the Tough Girl Tribe, a closed Facebook community. At $10, you're getting regular tweets from me, from my Twitter account at _tough_girl, and so on and so forth. So please do go check it out. It makes a huge difference. There's over 200 patrons supporting me, and it really, really does add up. If you get value from the Tough Girl podcast, if it's helped to change your life in some way, or it's encouraged you to step outside your comfort zone, pay it forward, give it back, help me make a difference in somebody else's life as well. Because the bigger I get the Tough Girl podcast and Tough Girl Challenges, the more women that are going to hear about these incredible stories of runners, of kayakers, of explorers, of athletes. We need to support women in this. You can support me. Become a patron at patreon.com/Tough Girl Podcast. Have an amazing day wherever you are, whatever you are doing. Give it your all. Have some fun. Just get outside, step outside your comfort zone and enjoy life. You have one life, live it. Just get out there and have some fun. All right, take care, and I'll speak to you next Tuesday on another awesome episode of the Tough Girl Podcast. Thank you so much for listening. Lots of love. Bye.